Hi, everyone. I see a lot of people talking about ERMI testing, and I feel like I need to address my thoughts about that. A lot of people ask me about it. So ERMI testing is when you're testing dust to get the history of the mold exposure in a building. And it is a screening test. So that means you should never, ever, ever make health decisions or moving decisions or selling decisions, buying decisions based on an ERMI test alone. It's a screening test. So just because you don't find mold in an ERMI test or find a lot of mold, what you might consider to be a lot of mold, and it's a range, doesn't mean that there isn't a very severe mold exposure in a space. Because you don't find something just means you didn't find something on that day at that time. It doesn't mean it's not there. Buildings are very complex. They're very much like the health of a person and the body of a person. They're living, breathing, changing. Events happen. They need maintenance. They need updating. They need vigilance. Sometimes they need work. So they're very, very complicated. And a simple screening test is not going to tell you 100% whether or not you have a mold exposure, how bad it is, or whether you should, drop everything and run away, or whether you should sell your home, or whether you should buy a home because it has a good score. So air tests are the same way, and you'll hear people saying, "Oh, you shouldn't do air, you should do ERMI." No, they're both screening tests. And one analogy that I would make is if you're testing in the wrong spot, on the wrong day, at the wrong time, you might miss it. Now, the history of the dust is supposedly more reliable because it's history over time. But depending on how long the dust has been there, it could be over 10 years. If you find dust that's really old, it could be 5 years. If you're collecting dust from a lot of different places, then you have absolutely no idea whether it was from the basement or whether it's from the upstairs bedroom or the bathroom. ERMI testing does not recommend that you, any of the labs, read their instructions. Pay attention to their instructions. Instructions matter on everything you do that has instructions. So the instructions will tell you not to test mold directly. And the reason why is because the kind of testing, if you see mold, or you think you see mold, then it probably is mold. But you can do a direct sample of that. You can take a sample of that area that you think might be mold, and you can send it into a lab, or there's some people that do this, and you can have them test that area and tell you, and so they can tell you what that mold is, if it's mold in fact, or if it's lint, or if it's something else. But you don't want to use ERMI where you run it over something that is actually moldy, because it will give you an unnatural score, because ERMI isn't meant to be for that, for testing actual mold. So ERMI testing results are based on a proportion, and if you don't test the proper way, then the proportions get out of whack, and it's very complicated, but it's about the simplest way I can describe it. So I have had in my own home, in relatives' homes, where we have tested using ERMI. I did it right, followed the directions, got great scores, in one case below a 2. And in that case below a 2, there was an exposed roof leak, and the people were very sick. So we know that we can't just rely on that. So visual inspection is probably the first thing you can do. And that's the first thing you should do. Actually, that's something I help people with. And if it's not me, then get somebody else. But a really good visual inspection, or look through my blog posts. I have lots of blog posts on where to look for construction errors and construction defects that might be leading to mold. Because if you do any of this testing, whether it's air or whether it's dust, you're going to want to test close to the area where there might be something. So I would start with the visual so that you can narrow it down, as opposed to doing 4 or 5 tests so that you have one in every room. Well, if you have an inspection done where you can say, well, there could be here, there's something here that's potential, then you can narrow down where to do the test. So one analogy that I like to make before I finish here, and I'm just trying to keep this short, was on ERMI testing would be if, say, you have a blindfold on and you're trying to run around with a butterfly net to see if you can catch leaves in the fall so that you can determine if, in fact, it's fall. Is it autumn? Leaves are falling. So you have a blindfold on, you don't know where you are, you don't know where to look, but you run around the yard, outside with a butterfly net trying to catch leaves. If you catch some, then you'll be like, oh yeah, I caught some leaves falling off the tree, so it's definitely fall, it's definitely autumn. But if you don't catch any, it could be because you're in the middle of the yard, there's no trees around. It could be that the wind wasn't blowing at that moment, at that time, for the leaves to fall and end up in your net. Or it could be that you swung your net in just the wrong place and didn't catch them. So that's the analogy that I would use. Mold is putting off spores at different times of the day. It may be, so in an ear test, it could be when you're sleeping and not in that 5 minute to 10 minutes time that you're testing. And I do recommend 10 minutes for ear tests. So, but it's a small window, and the dust sample is a small amount of dust. Post-remediation, don't do it. It's not worth it. I have articles on that, and I think I'll do a blog post on this very soon so that I can share some of the resources I have on why not to do post-remediation ERMIs. But they can be a good thing. I don't want to tell you that they can't be valuable. They definitely can. If you have a high ERMI score and you did everything right according to the test, then be concerned. Be concerned and look further. If you get a low score on your ERMI testing, that just means you're sick and you have a history of water damage, maybe you have none. But if you're sick and you have a history and it's related, could be related to mold, and you have a low ERMI score, then just throw it out. It's irrelevant. Try something else until you find other things that might point to the fact that there is no mold. And one of those is going to be a qualified inspection by someone who's very knowledgeable about building construction, how buildings are built, and where the defects occur. So those are my thoughts on ERMI testing, and I'm back. I'm going to try to do more lives. So I hope this is helpful. If you would like any one-on-one assistance, I teach you how to do your own inspection, and you can spend a lot more time than somebody you'd be paying. Plus, so I'm kind of the brains behind, and I can tell you what to do and where to look. You can schedule that through my website, avoidingmold.com. I review people's listings. That might be the best spend of your money is before you start doing ERMIs on every house you think you like. And I'll look through them and I'll point out where you maybe need to be concerned and if one seems better than another. And that will focus you going forward on where to look further, where to test if you decide to do so. But better yet, go to my online education. So especially the Before You Buy Your Rent series that comes with a free month in the Dwell Well Institute. Check out all the videos in there. And I'm focused on answering questions in there more than I am in Facebook. So that's what we're doing. The Build a Safe Home. If you're building, Build a Safe Home Masterclass. You get the Before You Buy Your Rent three-part series with that for free. You also get more months of the Dwell Well Institute. So check those out. Also, Moisture Basics is the ABCs of how water moves in buildings so that you can do this, and you can. So thanks for listening, and reach out. You can comment below this. Avoidingmold.com is the website.